Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys. Yes,
you've got the old Rubik's Cube from
your banner. You've got your banner, and I've got my 11 by 11 representing the income tax Rubik's Cube. So we'll be working on that.
He has to use a forklift to get that one in and around his house.
Just about that. Yeah, I'm going to bring that to CPAC and see how many people. How many people attention it attracts, that's going to be fun.
Great. Oh yeah.
It worked pretty well. What is that? That's the income tax I'm trying to mess with, and see.
Yeah. Can't figure it out because every time you turn it this way, it goes this way, and then the colors end up on the other side, and it gets.
Yeah, I'll bring the color shifting one as well, so we can have them both. Since I can do this one, I can't do this little one, so that'll work. But as we're talking about CPAC, let's again remind everybody that will be in Orlando, Florida, on February 24th through the 27th. That is a Thursday through Sunday.
That's right.
We, the FAIRtax Guys, are going to be there. Some other FAIRtax people we know are going to be there. And we would like 500 FAIRtax volunteers. We'd like to win the FAIRtax 500. If we can get 500 FAIRtax volunteers down there walking around in front of the media, walking around in front of all the political people, we can really make an impact in a place like that. Absolutely.
And I'm excited about being in Florida in late February because
I bet you are.
I live, it's like cold. And then the last few weeks leading up to this recording session, we've had a weekend of snow and ice with more sleet than anything else. And then this weekend, a little bit less, but still, and the deep Arctic window is opening up. So it's going to be down in the mid-teens this weekend at the time of our recording session, which is
just for the fun of it. I have Winston-Salem in my weather app, so I can scroll through and see what the weather is in Winston-Salem. Yeah. And for the past couple of days, it's not been all that different from where my friend is in Alaska.
Hey, 50. I mean, we've been at 50 degrees, not too bad. And then 38. And then, but it's getting ready to, this Arctic blast that's coming behind this cold front is going to be the first real deep freeze that we've had this winter season. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get on to business here on FAIRtax Power Radio. And something that I don't believe we mentioned last week, our episode last week about the IRS Publication 17 was number 300 in the FAIRtax Power Radio series. And so, that's quite a milestone.
Right, it is. I feel honored to be part of the 300, and I joined the group to help move things along and to support the program at about episode 200.
Okay,
so that's been over
pretty good
years, maybe 3.
All right, well let's get on with number 301 with our standard opening here at FAIRtax Power Radio, our weekly look at Congress.gov, what the Congress critters are trying to put into the tax code.
Oh, yes.
And we got a few goodies here for you this week. Now, let's see your reaction to this. This is a H.R. 6433 to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to eliminate the tax exemption of the International Olympic Committee and similar organizations. Have you heard that?
No, but that's interesting. The eliminate. Why? Why would they think they're going to get more money?
I don't know. Either that or the International Olympic Committee has raised the ire of Representative Michael Waltz down here in Florida. That's his bill. But he wants to eliminate the tax exemption of the International Olympic Committee or similar organizations. So we'll have to see. There was no text with that, so we'll have to see what I know. Do you know Brittany Bowe? Have you heard that name? The Olympic speed skater.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Her mom worked out at the college. I know her mom pretty well. I know Brittany very casually. I'll ask her about that and see see if she has any insight on what's going on there.
Well, when you talk about similar organizations, that's a wide net that gets thrown out through that bill. I would worry if I were running some sort of a similarly structured company or endeavor.
Sure. But the point here is if the tax code is willing to take on an entity, the size and scope of the International Olympic Committee, what do you think they'll do to you and me?
Stay tuned. Hey, let me tell you, it's quite an operation there. They're still running on the disk operating system from Windows back in 1987, from what I understand, though.
All right, well, let's move on here. HR 6428, to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to establish a state and local general sales tax credit for small businesses. Again, sounds like a good idea, but you're just making the tax code more complicated.
Yes, and some of these, and again, some of these ideas are could be supported, but what is the purpose of using the tax code, and why do we have to, one more page or 3 more pages to go in there?
I have a theory on that. You use the tax code because that's the way the Congress critters can keep businesses in line to do what they want. Do what I want, and I'll give you a tax credit. Do what I don't approve of, and I'll take that tax credit away.
Right. I'll turn you into a newt.
Okay.
Go ahead.
This was an interesting
going back to Monty Python there for just a minute. Sorry.
HR 6392. This is the No Tax Breaks for Drug Ad Acts. You can't have your television on for long, and you'll see a commercial from one of the big pharmaceutical companies convincing you that you've got something wrong and that they're super expensive. $5,000 a month prescription is the answer for you.
Right.
And apparently this Representative Alyssa Slotkin in Mississippi has had enough of that, so she has introduced the No Tax Breaks for Drug Ads Act. This one did have some text in it. I looked at it. It says to amend the Internal Revenue Code to deny the deduction for advertising and promotional expenses for prescription drugs. So, if you're in business, advertising is just, a normal business expense for just about any business. And if this becomes law, then advertising for a prescription drug company is no longer a valid business expense. Figure that out.
Yeah. Well, there's usually in radio, there's no tax levied on the advertiser for the transaction with the media company.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm hearing is that there now is going to be a calculation that has to be made with the advertiser, Pfizer, whoever it is, it's advertising this drug that's going to make this particular part of your life better. That they're going to be able to take. They're going to be able to take that dollar amount that they spend on advertising and not include it as an expense. I don't understand how that could be, and that again opens up a wide net of opportunity for some things to go on with regard to the other businesses that might fall into that.
There's the slippery slope. If they get away with disallowing advertising as a business expense for the pharmaceutical industry, what's to say, what industry is next?
Lures.
Yeah,
bait container warmers.
Bait container warmers. Yeah, well, they took what's to say that the beer companies might be next. They are big advertisers as well on a lot of things.
Car dealers. I can't imagine that I think at some point in time somebody will put their foot down on that one.
Yeah, but they say if you're going to deny the deductibility of advertising as a business expense for one industry, if you're in any other industry, you should be scared because the day may come when they come after you.
Yeah, and that's the other side of it. I mean, you could say, well, we like ice cream today, but we're going after steaks tomorrow, and and then after that it's running shoes and
sugary drinks, they're bad for your health. So they'll say you can no longer Coca-Cola and Pepsi and Dr. Pepper and those folks can no longer deduct the cost of their advertising as a business expense. One of these days, who knows? I say let's move on. One last one here. HR 6389. This is the Human Trafficking Survivor Tax Relief Act. You remember a couple of weeks ago, we talked about a proposal that if you sue an abortion provider under the state law like they have out in Texas, that they want to tax that at 100%, But now they're going the other way, and they're saying, well, if you receive some kind of civil damages or some kind of restitution as a result of you being a victim of human trafficking, then we're not going to tax that at all. That's not taxable income. And that reminds me of something that our economist friend David Kendall said a few weeks ago when we interviewed him on FAIRtax Power Radio. He said something that sounded kind of funny at the time. He said one of the hardest things with having an income tax is defining what's income and what isn't.
Oh my goodness.
So if you get any kind of civil restitution or damages from being a survivor of human trafficking, that's not income. But if you get it from this other thing, that is income. We're going to tax it 100%. And it's at the mercy and the whim of whatever Congress and whatever power party happens to be in power at the time when this goes on.
Exactly. Unbelievable. And speaking of figuring out what income is and what's not, the federal government, in their infinite wisdom, the U.S. Treasury has produced Publication 17. Are we ready to start talking about?
Oh, yes, I think so. We'll put Congress.gov away for another week, and we'll dig into that next time here on FAIRtax Power Radio. Or actually, next time, if my schedule is correct, next time will be our first of our quarterly Wally's World seminars here on FAIRtax Power Radio, where he takes a subject, and I believe, unless he changes his mind, he's going to be talking about the fair tax versus the flat tax. Something
and that's a confusing
that we have
thing
a lot.
For a lot of people. You hear a lot. Hear different people talking about fair tax and flat tax, and superficially, it's four letters that start with F.
Yeah.
And so people go, oh, well, it's the same thing. Well, no, the flat tax continues to include the Internal Revenue Service in the transaction.
And it's still a tax on income, and it's not going to stay flat. They keep messing with it. So again, if the schedule goes as we expect it will, next week's FAIRtax Power Radio will be our first Wally's Fair Tax World of 2022, and that'll be a really good thing. So hopefully you can catch that out. But back to Publication 17. Yeah. We're getting into that because that was just instructions, 140 pages worth of instructions and explanations about how to deal with your federal income tax return. And of course, you found there the thing we talked about last week was that if you steal property or if you engage in illegal activities and receive compensation thereof, you have to report that on your tax return. And the federal authorities actually expect people to do that. I mean, that's crazy. But
I saw somebody and told them that the other day, and they were like, "Really?" And I didn't know if they were thinking about it. Well, now I've got to go back and figure out where all these toasters I got came from. Or what it was, but what an insane, really? But this just, and folks, this program is designed to show the utter stupidity of some of the things that happen in and around the tax code and Publication 17. Yeah.
So that makes the best argument for getting rid of it, pulling it all out by the roots and replacing it with a fair tax. But as we mentioned last week, there had to be more stuff in Publication 17 that we can get into. And we found it on page 125.
And you can join along with us if you'd like. You go to IRS.gov, Publication 17, and read right along with us on page 125.
Publication 17 contains something called the Taxpayers Bill of Rights. Now, we're going to go through this in its entirety. I think we got time to do that. But I would love for anybody out there, has anybody ever tried to invoke one of these rights in their dealings with the Internal Revenue Service? That's crazy. Let's get into it. It says the number one on the Taxpayers Bill of Rights is the right to be informed. Taxpayers have the right to know what they need to do to comply with the tax code. How many hours have you got to devote to learning all that stuff before you start filling out your 1044? That says they are.
And can you get somebody on the phone and give you a complete answer in one session on the telephone? And how long do you have to wait for that?
No, and forever. Continuing, they are entitled to clear explanations of the law. Good luck. 75,000 pages worth. No, that even the professionals don't understand and can't figure out. Yeah, I'll have to get some water here in a minute. But you're entitled to clear explanations of the law, the IRS procedures, all tax forms, instructions, including publication 17, publications, notices, and correspondence. Taxpayers have the right to be informed of IRS decisions about their tax accounts and to receive clear explanations of the outcomes.
It might take you 20 years to get through all of that, but eventually you will have, and of course I'm being facetious, but maybe not, because a lot of folks have horror stories about communication. But you have a right to it. Whether or not you get it, that's probably a whole nother issue.
Yeah, well, go ahead and hit point 2 there.
Number 2, the right to quality service.
Wow.
Taxpayers have the right to receive prompt, courteous, and professional assistance in their dealings with the Internal Revenue Service, to be spoken to in a way they can easily understand, to receive clear and easily understandable communications from the IRS, and to speak to a supervisor about inadequate service. I guess that's kind of like an ombudsman. You know, you're going to go to the company that you're having trouble with and complain to somebody in that company.
I would like to speak to someone who has actually received clearly and easily understood assistance from the Internal Revenue. I'd like to talk to somebody who was just able to get through to them on the phone.
Yeah.
A stat I heard earlier said like one in 50 callers actually gets through. 49 out of 50 don't even get in.
And I'm thinking, you know, the next time I get a call from the Internal Revenue Service, which is rarely, that I would put them on hold for like 30 minutes, go eat lunch, and then come back and, you know, see if they're still there, and no music on the on hold section.
And then give them an insane answer to whatever they want to talk to you about.
The right to quality service.
The right to quality service.
It's definitely a service-oriented enterprise, the Internal Revenue Service. It says service.
The Internal Revenue Service is the only entity I know of where the customer is always wrong.
To start out with, you're guilty until proven innocent, or you're wrong until you either die or the person that you're working with no longer works with the Internal Revenue Service. The right to quality service.
Moving on, in the Taxpayers Bill of Rights, taxpayers have the right to pay no more than the correct amount of tax. Now, the only problem with that is nobody can figure out what the correct amount of tax is. I mean, way back in the 80s, Money Magazine gave the same information on a hypothetical family to 50 different professional tax preparers. I mean, this was, 40 years ago, and it's gotten more complicated over those 40 years, but they gave the 50 different tax preparers the exact same information. The simple question: how much does this family owe? They got 49 different answers. So if you could figure out what the correct amount of tax is under the current system, then you're a better man than most of those professional tax preparers. But under the fair tax, it's easy. 23% of every dollar you're spending. End of story.
Yeah, at the cash register. And nobody knows your business. Nobody knows what's going on. And I think, that part of that, the privacy part of it is I think important as time moves forward and generations pass and young people begin to get into the workplace. They'll realize, you know what, I don't want anybody knowing what's in my wallet, even though there's a commercial out there that says what's in your wallet.
All righty. We got to be moving along here. Point 4.
Yes, the right to challenge the IRS's position and be heard.
Now, not necessarily that you would win, but at least they'll listen to you before telling you to go jump in a lake.
That's right. It could be a very big lake, too. Taxpayers have the right to raise objections and provide additional documentation in response to formal IRS actions or proposed actions, to expect that the IRS will consider their timely objections and documentation promptly and fairly, and to receive a response if the IRS does not agree with their position.
Yeah, if the judge, jury, and executioner thinks you're wrong, you have the right to be informed thereof.
I'm going to jump into the fire here. Is that a good thing to do? I don't know. Yes, I think you should jump into the fire, said the blazing piece of wood in the fireplace. I mean, it just is insane that, and a lot of what we do on this program is help in as most positive a way as we can, is to underscore how absolutely antiquated, not only antiquated, but immoral the income tax is, and
how,
it's time to move it off the grid completely.
How unworkable it is. If you need to have a Bill of Rights, can you imagine what the Bill of Rights under the fair tax would be? You wouldn't need one. Moving along,
and
number
the
5.
other thing is you're looking at all this paper that comes with it, and there is this disclaimer called the Paperwork Reduction Act.
Oh, mercy!
It tells you about all this. So anyway, let's continue.
Let's
Number
scoot on.
5.
Number 5, the right to appeal an IRS decision in an independent forum. Taxpayers are entitled to a fair and impartial administrative appeal of most IRS decisions, including many penalties, and have the right to receive a written response regarding the Office of Appeals decision. Taxpayers generally have the right to take their cases to court. You don't need to do that when you're paying your federal taxes at the cash register as part of the price of the goods and services you're buying, do you?
This all goes away. And I can't throw it right now because I'm still reading some things from it.
But read number 6 there.
Going through this is it really is unbelievable and it's time. It really is, folks. It's time to end this madness. Number 6, the right to finality. The right to finality. Taxpayers have the right to know the maximum amount of time they have to challenge the IRS's position, as well as the maximum amount of time the IRS has to audit a particular tax year or collect a tax debt. Taxpayers have the right to know when the IRS has finished an audit.
Yes, and your bank
when all
account
the money
is gone.
drained out of your bank account.
There you go.
Savings and everything else.
All right, moving along. Number 7, the right to privacy. Now, there's a big one. Taxpayers have the right to expect that any IRS inquiry, examination, or enforcement action will comply with the law and be no more intrusive than necessary.
How can it be?
Sorry, I gotta laugh at that one.
How much more intrusive could it be than it is now? I mean, you go to the doctor for a certain particular procedure, and that's, one thing, but my goodness.
Yeah. That the IRS will respect all due process rights, including search and seizure. Tell that to people who have had their bank accounts hijacked by a civil asset forfeiture, and will provide, where applicable, a collection due process hearing. Now, have you heard any more fiction lately that's any better than that?
Well, I mean, they figure on page 125, how are you going to get all the way down here? But if you go through publication 17, there is a comprehensive step-by-step method to make sure that the IRS has as much information on you as possible in a clear, simple way that works for them. Mm-hmm. And you can tear all of this up and say, okay, I'm going to start paying my tax based on what I spend on new items and services. And that's what the fair tax is all about.
Okay, we got 5 minutes left to get through these last 3 points. Number 8.
I think we can do it. Number 8, the right to confidentiality. Taxpayers have the right to expect that information they provide to the IRS will not be disclosed unless authorized by the taxpayer or by law.
Or unless it's leaked.
Right. Or there's a hack into the server. We're running on DOS 1.0. Taxpayers have the right to expect appropriate action. Taxpayers have the right to expect appropriate action will be taken against employees, return preparers, and others who wrongfully use or disclose taxpayer return information.
Have any heads rolled over the ProPublica leak?
I don't think so.
I don't think so, and I don't think they will.
It's out of the news cycle. It's 2 minutes. It's 2 minutes away. So.
Chalk that down to a little more creative writing on the part of the IRS. Number 9, the right to retain representation. Taxpayers have the right to retain an authorized representative of their choice to represent them in their dealings with the IRS. Taxpayers have the right to seek assistance from a low-income taxpayer clinic if they cannot afford somebody like Steve Hayes back when he was practicing tax law.
Right. And it sounds like a Miranda reading there too. If you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. The Taxpayer Bill of Rights, down to number 10, and the right to a fair and just tax system. This is where you enact the fair tax.
Yes, I say
Right
yes.
to a fair and just tax system.
The right to the fair tax, correct.
Number 10. So we're going to send that information into the Internal Revenue Service and see what they say. They'll probably come knocking on the door, Taxpayers have the right to expect the tax system to consider facts and circumstances that might affect their underlying liabilities, ability to pay, or ability to provide information timely. Taxpayers have the right to receive assistance from the Taxpayer Advocate Service if they are experiencing financial difficulty or if the IRS has not resolved their tax issues properly and timely through its normal channels.
I still want to know if there's anybody out there who has ever tried to invoke one of these rights in their dealings with the IRS and what the result was.
Yeah,
I can guess. I imagine there's probably, I'd imagine, that's buried in page 125 of a 140-page document. I bet that 98.76% of taxpayers don't even know that thing, Bill of Rights, exists.
it's very possible. I mean, if you do your own, if you're a simple tax return and you're doing your own, send in we got your couple of W-2s and 4s and all that, and you send them off and you get your money, but you wait for your money back so you can go buy a big screen TV or a small vehicle. You get excited because you get a refund, but you really don't get into the 140 plus pages of publication 17 at all. I mean, it's a very revealing document that underscores a lot of what we talk about here on the program about how insane the income tax is, and that's something that the FAIRtax works on, that we work on, that Americans for Fair Taxation works on to educate folks. We have a lot of people that are running for office in the 2022 election cycle, some of whom we will be talking to here within the coming weeks. And we invite you as a listener to and a viewer of the program to go out there and find folks that are running in your district coming up in this election cycle, and take that FAIRtax pledge to them and help them understand, because we need not just everybody running, and maybe they won't win, but at least they'll be in the election cycle in the public talking about the FAIRtax. The FAIRtax.
Yes, I heard from John Gaver a couple of days ago. He has scored number 5. He's got 4 candidates out there, 2 in District 8, 2 in District 2 out in Texas, that have signed the FAIRtax pledge. Number 5, another one in Texas 8. He just came on board, and so hopefully, and 2 weeks from today, after the Wally's World next week, we'll have another FAIRtax candidate pledge signer to talk to, and so we'll know about that when we get there. But until then,
John,
that's going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. We're a slap out of time. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
The FAIRtax Guys reminding you again that the FAIRtax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
The FAIRtax does not hurt the poor and does not reward the rich, because it's not a straight sales tax like the sales tax we already have. The FAIRtax creates a level playing field by taxing everyone at the same rate at the cash register, but untaxes the household up to poverty level. This means that those living closer to the poverty level pay a lower overall tax rate, while those living a lavish lifestyle pay a higher overall tax rate. Yet the law still applies to everyone equally. This is called the prebate, which reimburses every legal American household the taxes they will have to pay on the basic necessities each month. As those basic necessities vary by household, the FAIRtax untaxes you and not the purchases. This keeps tax lobbyists out of the picture and keeps you in control of what you pay. Do you think the prebate will be too expensive and act just like a huge welfare program? The prebate will cost less than half of what the current deductions and exemptions cost, and operates just like the standard deduction you already take. It's your money. You're just getting it back each month rather than once a year. Everyone under the FAIRtax controls their own tax rate by deciding when and how much money they spend above poverty level, and thus how much they pay in taxes. To learn more, please visit fairtax.org. And be sure to like us on social media to help educate your friends